Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, tensions in the region rising sharply as the United States and Iran step up their tit-for-tat behaviors. Meanwhile, back in Israel, new coronavirus lockdown measures are set in motion. And finally, stay tuned because it's the moment we've all been waiting for, apparent proof of intelligent life among the stars. Tehran and Washington at it again. This time, the Trump administration upping its sanctions on Iran again in response to the latest increase in Iran's uranium enrichment. The United States once again imposing economic sanctions against Iran following the latest announcement from the Ayatollah regime that it will begin enriching uranium to a level of 20%, far beyond the under 4% limit stipulated in the JCPOA nuclear deal. And the new sanctions targeting Iran's steel sector in particular, including a dozen Iranian companies, 3 foreign holding companies for Iranian firms, and 1 China-based manufacturer. Also, this is on top of the already crippling sanctions reimposed back in 2018 when the United States first pulled out of the 2015 agreement. The Trump administration arguing that Iran never adhered to the letter nor spirit of the deal. Iran, however, views the move as completely legal, adding that they also now plan to install another 1,000 upgraded centrifuges.
آغازگر هیچ جنگی نخواهیم بود. اما اگر خطای فاحشی از جانب آمریکا رخ بده، از امنیت و منافع حیاتی خودمون با قدرت کامل دفاع خواهیم کرد. این اقدام بر اساس مصوبه مجلس انجام گرفته و ما فکر می‌کنیم مطابق با بند 36 برجام هست حتما. با بند 36 برجام انطباق داره این تصمیم. ایران حق خودش میدونه که اقدامات مقتضی را تا وقتی همه طرف‌ها به تعهدات خودشون عمل کنند این اقدامات مقتضی رو ما در پیش بگیریم.
The international community, on the other hand, while condemning the recent changes, is mostly just trying to keep things calm.
Nous notons avec une vive inquiétude les mesures prises par l'Iran en vue de commencer l'enrichissement de l'uranium à niveau de 20%. Cette action constituera un écart important par rapport aux engagements nucléaires de l'Iran au titre de JCPOA, ce qui aura de sérieuses conséquences et implications pour la non-prolifération nucléaire. D'efforts pour préserver l'accord et revenir à sa pleine mise en œuvre par toutes les parties.
That said, Iran's continuing nuclear ambitions are also leading to new partnerships in the Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gantz calling for unity against the growing Iranian threat, and Arab Gulf states similarly refreshing broken ties by realigning with Qatar and praising the United States' recent actions.
ونحن اليوم ما أحوج أن نكون لتوحيد جهودنا للنهوض بمنطقتنا ومواجهة التحديات التي تحيط بنا. وخاصة التحديات اللي يمثلها برنامج النووي للنظام الإيراني وبرنامجه للصواريخ البالستية ومشاريع التخريب الهادمة التي يتبناها وكلاءه في أنشطة الإرهابية والطائفية هدفها زعزعة الأمن والاستقرار في المنطقة والعالم.
In other news, coronavirus lockdowns in Israel getting stricter starting Thursday night, as the infection rates rising sharply despite the amazing vaccine campaign. Chana Rifkin with the details.
אנחנו בעיצומה של מגפה עולמית שמתפשטת במהירות שיא עם המוטציה הבריטית. היא הגיעה לישראל, היא גובה חיים רבים. אנחנו צריכים מיד להטיל סגר מלא. אנחנו בתוך ישיבת הממשלה, אין לי ספק שהממשלה תאשר את זה, הכנסת צריכה להעביר את זה מיד. כל שעה שמשאים, המחלה מתפשטת עוד יותר מהר והיא תגבה מחיר יקר מאוד. ולכן צריך כאן לא רק את שיתוף הפעולה של שרי הממשלה, יש אותו, צריך שיתוף פעולה של אזרחי ישראל, אני בטוח שגם אותו יש לנו. אנחנו צריכים אבל בתווך שהכנסת תעביר את זה ללא דיחוי מיד. מדובר בהצלת חיי אדם, לא פחות מזה.
Well, heeding the Prime Minister's call, Israel's cabinet has now agreed on a new set of lockdown restrictions set to begin this Thursday night, and it's scheduled to last for at least 2 weeks. New regulations in the latest full closure include a complete shutdown of all schools and non-essential businesses, with the exception of special education programs. Additionally, gatherings will be limited to 5 people indoors and 10 outdoors, and domestic travel will continue to be limited to just 1 kilometer from home, with few exceptions. As for international travel, all Israelis returning from abroad will again have to quarantine for up to 2 weeks at state-run hotels. And anyone who hasn't already purchased a ticket to go abroad during the next 2 weeks will be barred from exiting the country. This as the infection rate continues to balloon out of control, despite one of the most successful vaccination campaigns on Earth. In fact, over 8,000 daily infections are now confirmed for the second day in a row. The total active number of cases in Israel has now risen to nearly 60,500, with the death toll similarly climbing to 3,497. And hospitals are reporting dire circumstances, with both staff and resources quickly getting overwhelmed amidst the third outbreak in the country. Even patients are now revealing just how horrific the reality is, like 44-year-old Shalom Pinia, who told Israeli media that he was mentally broken by recent experiences, seeing a dead body lying in a hospital bed for hours before being removed, and an elderly man lying helplessly on the floor, even wetting himself while crying out to no avail.
Now, taking things from bad to worse amidst an ongoing pandemic, hospitals around the world are now trying to fight off two different challenges: keeping up with their rapidly growing caseloads and fighting off an increasing number of cyber attacks. Israel, for one, seeing a 25% increase in such attacks in the last year alone. But joining me now to discuss is Islam Levy, founder and CEO of Confidas and former secretary to the Prime Minister's National Cyber Initiative. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, why the recent rise in cyber attacks on healthcare?
Well, the reason is because, as you said, healthcare organizations are pushed to deliver better medical services. And those who are behind the attacks have financial motivations, and they know that those who are pushed to provide service have a higher possibility of paying, and therefore they're attacking healthcare organizations. Do you ask me if it's the right thing to do, if it's moral? The answer is absolutely not. But we have to understand that those behind those attacks are organized crime and criminals who are there for the money, and they don't really care about morality, it seems.
So, does the coronavirus pandemic and the current public health crisis, does that make, public health systems any easier of a target?
Well, public health systems are and were an easy target even before the pandemic. But we have to understand that what changed during the pandemic is the way that criminals make money. The ordinary ways, for example, protection or the standard crime, is almost not possible because of the lockdowns. And therefore, criminal organizations had to find new and novel ways of making money. Cyber enables them to make money by attacking companies that now work remotely. They're opening up they're expanding their attack surface. And that allows those who were not in cyber before to enter cybercrime with lower boundaries. Healthcare organizations, because they're not really secured, because they were always in favor of doing less security for not because they don't think it's important, because they would rather invest more in saving lives than in securing the machines that are saving lives. That's why.
Well, so what steps can hospitals, and I think to answer something you just said, more importantly, patients, how can they take steps to maybe protect themselves? Especially because I'm assuming hospitals have a lot of, sensitive information about their patients.
Absolutely. Well, there are the best practices, which is installing very good cybersecurity products that know how to deal with ransomware attacks, doing the standard checks and penetration testing. But let me tell you something. I don't think that this is the sole responsibility of the hospitals. If criminals are attacking people and those attacks can cause loss of life or endanger lives, this is the role of governments to interfere and catch those who are behind it and deter them and make them understand that this is a red line that they shouldn't cross. So it's not only about what security can hospitals do. There's a lot to do, but we have to understand if they will invest in security, then they will have less money to invest in medical treatment. And we need to make sure that the governments in those where those hospitals are attacked are doing what they need to do in order to deter the criminals who are attacking those hospitals.
All right, Ram Levy, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
All right, now a lot of attention has been paid recently to Israel's incredible vaccination campaign, as nearly 15% of Israel's 9.3 million citizens received their first doses of a vaccine in just 2 weeks. But so how exactly did Israel pull it off?
אני ממשיך לעבוד מסביב לשעון להביא מיליוני חיסונים לישראל, ובד בבד מערכת הבריאות ממשיכה לחסן את אזרחי ישראל בקצב שמעורר התפעלות בכל העולם. השילוב הזה של הבאת מיליוני חיסונים לארץ וחיסון רבבות אזרחים ביום מאפשר לנו להמשיך להיות הראשונים בעולם לצאת מהקורונה, לפתוח את הכלכלה שלנו ולחזור לחיים. אנחנו במקום הראשון בעולם בחיסונים. אנחנו חייבים להיות במקום הראשון בעולם גם בהצלת חיים.
Blasting past every other nation, more than 1.5 million Israelis, or nearly 15% of the population, has now been given the first of 2 doses from the Pfizer and BioNTech coronavirus vaccine. And the whole world is now looking for the recipe to this success as the deadly pandemic continues its spread. But of course, it was also a series of other important decisions responsible for bringing us to this point, and starting with offering to pay a premium to get the vaccines in the first place. Reports alleging that Israel paid nearly twice the market value for Pfizer's vaccine in order to move up in line for distribution. Then once the vaccines arrived, the country began an equally aggressive campaign to dish them out, including breaking down the shipment into pizza box-sized units with Pfizer's permission.
Israel prepared very well for the logistical challenges in terms of the cold chain, in terms of finding solutions to enable smaller quantities of doses for remote areas, so that what any country should do, be prepared, but be flexible.
The way we make best use of the doses is that they arrive from Pfizer in a tray with 195 vials, which are roughly 1,000 vaccine doses. And what we do is we repack them into smaller packages, and that makes for better use in the different vaccination stations, okay? Because the station might not want to use 1,000 vaccine doses, but rather use 100, 150, or 200. So we individually pack within our logistics center to the exact amount the station requires.
Then simultaneously, as the Pfizer vaccine was rolled out across the country, Israeli authorities continued operations to ensure that other vaccines would follow suit, with millions of doses of the similar Moderna vaccine now set to arrive within weeks. That said, having the drugs in stock is just one half of the equation, getting people to take them then being the other. And Israel's Green Passports Incentivization Program is the shining star on that front, alongside the willingness to vaccinate not-at-risk groups with any soon-to-expire doses.
I want to be free. I'm not young, and every year is important. I still hungry to travel. And the fact that in 2.5 months I'll be free and I'll be able to see my family and friends and begin to live a normal life again, looking forward to it very, 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 very much.
After they get the vaccine, all the old people who need the vaccine get it. They have a vaccine that they can't to freeze again. So the people that doesn't need necessarily the vaccine can't to get it. So I mean.
Nothing without its setbacks, however, with stockpiles for the second vaccine dose dwindling quickly, leading Israeli authorities to toy with the idea of either delaying the second dose or nixing it altogether, as other nations have decided. And this despite vaccine manufacturers continuously protesting against either of these choices.
Israel was good in reacting quickly, but not good in maintaining a long-term strategy to cope with the crisis. The decision-making in many cases was irrational, inconsistent, and not received well by the public.
Now, for more, please visit our new and improved website at ILTV.tv and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for daily updates. In other news, we've talked about how Jewish Portuguese descendants are eligible for Portuguese citizenship and thus EU visas. But recent changes in Portuguese marriage law is now complicating the issue. So here to break down the news, I'm joined by Jordan Levy-Bograd, the manager of the European Immigration Department with the Cohen Decker Pex and Brosh law firm. Jordan, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, okay, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about what changed in the law?
Actually, this change is a good change. Before, non-Sephardic spouses who wanted to get citizenship without living in Portugal for 18 months would have to be married for at least 3 years to the Sephardic spouse and have joint children. However, the change in the law actually is that spouses can be married for 6 years, regardless of children, and the non-Sephardic spouse can gain citizenship without living in Portugal for 18 months, as it stands right now.
Okay, so how is this affecting the process of Jewish Portuguese descendants applying for citizenship?
Well, there is an imminent change in the law that is going to happen, but the thing is that we still don't know when. The government hasn't given a sign. There's been a lot of rumors. A lot of people think it's going to be February, March. It could be 6 months from now. It could be 2 years from now. We really don't know. We have a legal team in Portugal. We're constantly in contact with them for updates, but there's nothing concrete at the moment.
All right, well, so in the meantime, to the best of your knowledge, who is still eligible? Is it non-Jews and Jews, or maybe just Jews?
Well, anyone that can prove that they're related to a Sephardic Jew, the chances are ideal and best with people who are Jewish today or children of Jewish fathers. People who have connections to countries like Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, and then northern African countries like Egypt and Syria, Libya, Lebanon, Tunisia, Algeria. Those countries are very, very clearly Sephardic, and people who have connections to those are almost assuredly Sephardic Jews.
All right, so obviously, known religion aside, I think one of the best ways to trace your lineage is through a last name. So what are some of the family names, or the more common family names that you've come across that are descendant of Portuguese?
Well, it's great that we're talking about this, because I've had clients who have incredibly Sephardic last names and they didn't realize it, and they call and ask if they're eligible, and they for sure are. Names like Abutbul, for instance, or Buzaglu, or Shetrit, Abarbanel, Ederi, Halevi, Hakohen. There's a lot. If it sounds somewhat Spanish or Italian or Portuguese, most likely it's a Sephardic surname.
Well, and it's funny that you said, because some of these names, even to a Hebrew speaker like myself, like Hakohen, like that sounds very Jewish to me.
Right, of course. Usually Levy, Cohen, I'm Levy, for instance, that can be anything. That can be Ashkenazi, that can be Sephardi, but usually, typically, Halevi, Hakohen is very indicative of Sephardic.
All right, so how do you start the process, and how long does that process usually take?
So we start the process by gathering documents, connecting them to the Sephardic ancestor, the country of their origin, and then usually it's very quick to get the recommendation, but in terms of once we file all the official documents to the Portuguese government, it's taking more like 24 to 29 months now because of all the backups with Corona and bureaucracy there.
All right, well, I'm sure that there are a lot of people at home watching this who have many more questions to ask you. So luckily for you guys, if you have anything else that you'd like to ask Jordan, she's doing a live Q&A on our ILTV Facebook page at 9 p.m. Israel time tonight. Make sure to tune in. Jordan, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
All right, now speaking of families, one of the major changes hurting new parents over the past year was major cuts to Israeli maternity benefits. And this due to the massive rise in unemployment. But that said, the Israeli Finance Ministry and National Insurance Institute now have some very good news. You see, normally new mothers in Israel are entitled to up to 15 weeks of paid maternity leave, with the NII paying out their regular salaries. But this entitlement goes out of the window if the mother hasn't worked during the 10 months prior to delivery. And with the COVID-caused unemployment crisis, the number of women in such a situation has risen dramatically. So to close the gaps in the safety net, the Finance Ministry has finally announced its solution. As of now, all mothers who give birth between January 1st and June 30th of this year will still be eligible for maternity leave benefits, even if they've been unemployed or on unpaid leave for extended periods of time. Moving on, 2 days ago, we reported to you that according to Professor Avi Loeb of Harvard University, an alien object passed through our solar system in 2017, thus proving that we are not alone in the universe. But what is this proof? Well, joining us now to discuss is Professor Avi Loeb himself, chair of the Harvard Astronomy Department and director of the university's Black Hole Initiative. Professor, I'm so excited to have you here because I'm somewhat a believer of myself. What can you tell us about Oumuamua, and is this the first real proof of alien life?
Well, Oumuamua is the first object that came close to Earth that was spotted from outside the solar system. It moved too fast to be bound to the sun. And at first, astronomers thought it must be a comet or an asteroid of the type that we find in the solar system that came from another star. But then as we collected data, it looked as if the object is very peculiar. It's most likely flat. It is much longer than it is wide, and it doesn't have any cometary tail, yet it is being pushed away from the sun by some additional force. And the question is, what's that force? And we suggested that it might be just the sunlight reflecting off its surface in the way that a sail reflects the wind. So we are currently developing this technology, light sail, by which you can push a spacecraft, a sail that is lightweight with a beam of light or with sunlight. And the idea is that perhaps this is some space junk or debris that was produced by another civilization. I wouldn't say that it's a proof. It's just that this object looks like nothing we have seen before, and it could be artificial in origin. And in order to find out whether it is, I mean, we cannot really chase it, but we can find other objects that look similar in the coming years.
So, again, to kind of follow up on my own question again, isn't it possible, or what's the probability that this is just a natural phenomenon that we have not yet encountered?
Well, it's interesting. Astronomers that are from the mainstream that try to explain it in terms of natural processes had great difficulties. They had to invoke, again, something that we have never seen before, like a hydrogen iceberg. And the problem with that is that it would evaporate very quickly. They suggested maybe it's a dust bunny of the type, a collection of dust particles that is very porous, that is pushed by sunlight. Again, that would not be a very stable configuration. So it's not as if they said, oh, we can actually explain it in analogy to an object that we have seen. They had to come to hypothesize the existence of things we've never seen before. And my point is, if it's nothing that like we have seen before, potentially it could be a technological equipment. It's just like going to the beach. I enjoy walking on the beach and looking at seashells, but every now and then you find a plastic bottle that may indicate that it carries a message from another civilization in the case of what we find on the sky. Now, I should say it's not a speculation that there are other civilizations, because we now know that half of the sun-like stars have a planet of the size of the Earth, roughly at the same distance from the star, so that there could be liquid water on the planet,
sure.
And also the chemistry of life as we know it. So if you arrange for similar circumstances to those that we find on Earth in billions of other systems just within the Milky Way, it's very unlikely that we are alone. And moreover, just to finish, it's very unlikely that we are the sharpest cookie in the jar, that we are the smartest kid on the block.
All right, well, I am so excited for the implications of this and how the rest of the scientific community is going to receive this data and kind of extrapolate from there. Until then, Avi Loeb, Professor Loeb, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy again with a low of about 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 degrees Celsius. And then tomorrow, the week-long fog should lift just a little for a sunny day with highs averaging 73 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 Celsius. And now before we go, of course, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. If somebody can teach me how to teach my dog to do this, I will be very, very grateful. Oh my gosh. All right, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.19 shekels to the American dollar and 2.51 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And don't forget to visit the all-new and improved ILTV website at iltv.tv and let us know what you think. Just don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for the latest updates while you're there. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you again so much for watching.